The Oval Office is the ultimate testing ground for American leadership, where every decision is weighed, measured, and judged. Over time, historians have organized these leaders into a familiar hierarchy. At the very top of that list sits Abraham Lincoln, cemented in the public consciousness as the absolute standard of executive success. And at the very bottom, figures like James Buchanan serve as the undisputed baseline for historical failure. Recently, these historical report cards have sparked intense cultural debate. Modern administrations achieve surprisingly high placements right out of the gate, while long-standing conservative icons suddenly drop in the standings. Public debates over individual winners and losers often ignore the underlying mechanics. The rankings depend on a specific set of mathematical and ideological rules that dictate the final result. Major evaluations like the C-SPAN Presidential Historian Survey and the Siena College Poll ask experts to grade presidents across a specific set of categories. These scores form the accepted baseline for evaluating a presidency. Many of these categories are nearly impossible to measure objectively. Experts are asked to assign hard numbers to entirely subjective traits like moral authority, imagination, or even luck. This heavy reliance on subjective scoring severely punishes historical figures like James Buchanan. Because his term ended as the country fractured into the Civil War, experts consistently give him the lowest possible marks, cementing him in last place. If you strip away the qualitative opinions and evaluate these administrations strictly on quantitative data, like tracking specific economic indicators or counting legislative appointments, the established historical hierarchy shifts drastically. This chart highlights a geographic distortion. Look at the data surrounding the 1860s. Presidents serving immediately before and after Abraham Lincoln suffer from the Lincoln effect, receiving an artificial dip in their scores because they share a timeline with a universally revered figure. When you examine the scoring criteria, it becomes clear that these qualitative metrics often measure a president's historical timing and sheer luck rather than their actual executive competence. Historians score presidents in 9 performance categories, alongside a 10th, performance in context. The rankings average all 10. Statistically, the first 9 already account for the 10th. Averaging them counts the same data twice, heavily favoring crisis leadership while minimizing administrative skills. If you correct this double counting and rank the presidents using only the holistic performance in context metric, the hierarchy breaks. In the 2021 survey, fixing the math shifts the positions of about 2/3 of the presidents on the list. Without that hidden inflation for specific categories, presidents who relied heavily on administrative execution over visionary rhetoric drop significantly. Richard Nixon, for example, drops by 4 places in the newly corrected rankings. A single mathematical decision, invisible to the general public, dictates who rises and who falls, holding the power to rewrite the official hierarchy of American leadership. The people making these mathematical decisions are academic historians and political scientists, and they bring their own distinct worldviews to the grading rubric. Researchers have identified a strong bias for action among these academics. They consistently award the highest marks to figures like Franklin D. Roosevelt, who dramatically expanded the size and scope of federal power. This bias heavily rewards wartime presidents and crisis managers like Woodrow Wilson, elevating their standing regardless of the actual necessity or the long-term fallout of the conflicts they initiated. The formula actively penalizes quiet administrators who keep the government running smoothly. Instead, it elevates charismatic figures like John F. Kennedy, who drive aggressive, conflict-oriented foreign policy. Ultimately, these experts project their own political preferences onto the past. The grading rubric rewards aggressive action and executive expansion over quiet stability and legislative restraint. Every ranking reflects the specific anxieties and academic methodologies of the present day. These lists serve as contemporary snapshots, capturing what modern historians value in an executive. This explains the volatile, highly debated placements of contemporary politicians. The erratic scores of figures like Donald Trump or Barack Obama are the direct output of a subjective, highly constructed formula. The danger arises when these flawed calculations leave the academy. They seep into classrooms, media coverage, and textbooks, where highly subjective academic math solidifies into unquestioned objective truth. We shouldn't discard historical evaluations entirely, but we must examine the specific people and the mathematical formulas writing the rules. These metrics produce the very reputations they appear to record. By defining the criteria for success, the experts determine how future generations will perceive the very nature of leadership.